That fall of 1973, we would cross the line to being 13. Shortly after Yom Kippur War erupted, we girls started taking turns marching to our Moshava cemetery in Karkul, where now some of the strongest demonstrations against the anti-democratic coup are taking place. We carried a giant garland from our junior high school to the fallen soldiers' plot. Without any preparation for what we would encounter, we stood just steps away from the open graves, protecting our hearts from the families' guttural moans as their sons' bodies were lowered into the freshly dug trench. My gut was tight, my heart deeply sad over the irreparable loss these families endured. The rhythmic cracking of the cicadas in the trees were my only companions. With each moan, left my body. I wanted to stop. I wanted it all to stop. But every week there were more funerals. The gun salute was shattering. After a couple of weeks, we understood that the terrible ceremony would repeat itself over and over again. The pain was beyond comprehension, and we didn't even know any of those boys who were buried. A week later, it became worse, much worse. My friend's older brother was killed in the North Front in his tank. No one survived. I knew her brother, and I observed firsthand the repercussions of the loss on a family. I will read some words in Hebrew from a letter that my friend Tova shared with me yesterday, that she wrote recently to her fallen brother Nimrod. And I'll read in Hebrew. אח שלי, אהוב יקר, חלפו כמעט 50 שנה מאז הלכת, אבל בעצם לא הלכת מעולם. אתה איתי, בתוכי, בנשמתי, חלק בלתי נפרד מחיי, וככזה תישאר. היית לי הרבה יותר מאח, היית עבורי משענת של כוח וגאווה, ליקטת סביבך את כל המשפחה, והיית לה זרקור של אור, ביטחון ואהבה. היית העוגן של המשפחה ושל אמא במיוחד. המוות שלך זעזע את חיי ואת חיי המשפחה כולה. האדמה נשמטה מתחת לרגליי, וכל מה שאני ומה שהיה כל אחד מאיתנו ומה שיכולנו להיות קיבל תפנית חדה ועיצב את חיינו. כשנשמעה אזעקה בשעה 2 ביום הכיפורים, אחז בי רעד נוראי, ורצתי עם אבא וברוך למחסן שמתחת לבית לחפש הגנה. אמא סרבה להצטרף אלינו. ידענו כולנו היכן אתה נמצא ומה יכולה להיות המשמעות לכך. דיברת בבית תוך פתיחת מפות ששמורות אצלי עד היום, במיוחד עם אבא, על האפשרות של יום קרב, מתקפה סורית, ומה היו נתיבי התקיפה המשוערים. לא שמענו ממך ולא קיבלנו שום ידיעה לגביך ימים ארוכים, עד שרותי הצליחה לאתר אותך בבית חולים רמב"ם באמצעות אמא שלה, שהייתה אחות ראשית בבית חולים רוטשילד. אבא ואמא ירדו לבית החולים לראות אותך וחזרו הביתה קודרים ונפולים, ורק אמרו, הלך לנו הילד. מספר ימים לאחר מכן נפטרת מפצעיך. אמא ואבא לא יכלו לשאת את הכאב, וכל אחד מהם הגיע בהמשך לאשפוז פסיכיאטרי. נשארנו אני וברוך בבית שסבתא מגיעה מן הקיבוץ כדי לדאוג ולטפל בנו. בסיום מכתבה, טובה חותמת במילים, עם השנים התחשלתי ואני מרגישה זכות גדולה להיות אחותך ולחזור על הזיכרונות ולהיות גאה בך על האדם המיוחד שהיית ועל הזכות שנפלה בחיקי להכירך ולהיות אחותך. After the burial, my friend was sent to stay with me. We shared a bed in my grandmother's house. No one knew how to comfort this child that had lost her brother. Her parents decompensated and her twin brother went numb. while my friend was the only one to express the entire family's palette of emotions: sadness, devastation, anger, rage, resignation, envy, and now being moved out of the family for expressing too much. I felt helpless at this age to help my friend contain her debilitating state of loss. Being a member of a lefty youth movement, Hashomer HaTzair, I couldn't stop thinking of how futile this all was. At the time, I had little awareness of the equal level of loss to the other side. It made clear to me that if death happens to one person, known or unknown to me, it will never stop the next death that will devastate families in an ever-growing cycle. The cycle of violence becomes the sword on which we live. Some years later, after my own military service in the Air Force, I accidentally walked into the wrong class at the University of Haifa. The blackboard was marked with a chalk line right down the middle. On one side, it said 600 soldier casualties under the heading "Too Costly." But on the left-hand side, there was the number 300 soldier casualties under the heading "Acceptable." It was meant for the decision makers to weigh the cost of a war. This cold calculus was devastating. The Yom Kippur War claimed over 2,600 lives. I could never see war death in those terms, an acceptable number or a costly number. Many Israelis refuse to turn a blind eye to this cycle of violence and grief. When a friend's 14-year-old niece was killed in a terrorist attack in Jerusalem, her parents decided to turn their grief into an action. They started the Parent Circle Families Forum for both Israelis and Palestinian parents to support each other and raise awareness. To the devastation of a lost child, to the cycle of violence on either side. However you fall on the side of the political map, it is admirable that grieving families on both sides rose to the terrible occasion to say enough. No one wants to lose a child. The breakup of individual families, of communities, of a whole nation cannot sustain such existence. The coup being attempted now by the right-wing government will only invite more devastation to all who live on this beloved land. Hate mongers will usher in more extremism, more division, and will only bring more people to the edge of a grave with helpless, senseless deaths. Witnessing this cycle is like carrying a sharp nail in your body forever. You become aware of the randomness of in which your loved one might lose their lives. Without true democracy for all, we are heading to a disaster. It doesn't have to be this way. תודה רבה.